So let's get into it. Deliver anywhere, anytime. I believe that is the goal, Anders, Alexander, for Hennes & Mauritz. Yeah. So I'll hand over to you, and we'll hear the customer case story from Hennes & Mauritz.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, let's start then, Alexander. So if you click to the next image there. So first of all, I think we should just present ourselves then. My name is Anders Geijer. I'm currently the product area manager within H&M and Mauritz in the area that is called Fulfillment Center Operation. So I don't know if you heard the news about H&M, but we have gone into a product organization in our BizTech function. We're basically now from being a big IT organization moved into a BizTech organization, and also then constructed that organization in a new way of working, more in this product organization way of working and more agile. I have been working with logistics and warehousing and supply chain since I was in the cradle almost, but since I started to work, I started in Electrolux, where I was also there part of leading logistics in a big SAP program. And after 11 years of different roles in that program, I decided to take on this global retail company and get into this and really I've been fascinating about, I mean, the kind of huge potential this company have, and also the markets is of course on a global level. So it's been really exciting, and also, as I said, this transformation and into I think to this BizTech is something that also will flavor a bit of what we are talking about today, to going from a lot of projects in waterfall. We always need to be waterfall building warehouses, but this mindset has been shifting a lot on how we can facilitate our competence and our way of working towards value and adjust our timelines in this new agile way of working then. So that's me. Together with myself in the room, I have...
Hello, my name is Alexander Bender. I am more coming from the supply chain strategy and execution side. I've always worked basically on the interface between IT and the operations side, especially. Spent quite a bit of time also in innovation management. So actually, if I have a doctorate, but that's in innovation management. And after 20 years working not in innovation management or very little, I actually learned that a lot of what we've done back then had to do with what we would call today change management. And so I've been able to reapply a lot of those learnings in a lot of my projects, and also with Hennes & Mauritz here over the last 2 years. I've been working in supply chain, not from the cradle, but only since about 2005 only. Got really my biggest learnings with working with a company that was called PRTM Management Consulting that invented basically the score model back in the 80s. And then since the last 12 years with Westernacher, who is doing a lot of supply chain management projects around the world. In fact, that's really our bread and butter, transportation management, EWM, always innovating with our customers, including over the last almost now 2 years with Hennes & Mauritz. Good.
Good. So a bit about us then, and now we're going to talk about our kind of background and goals for this initiative then. So we will not go in too much about H&M geography or plans or warehouses, because of course that's something we'll also want to keep a little bit secret. But we can then mention that we had a growth plan then in North America that will then require that we increase the warehouse capacity during the years to come. And we were really into, at that time, we had a lot of projects going on, warehouse projects, building quite large warehouses then in a more waterfall specific way. We in this project, when we now we see okay, we need to expand, we need to find a new way to basically leverage and be faster to market, and also look into a lot of new technology. On doing so, we decided quite early that we operate and we run our warehouse both with our own WMS, EWM, but we also run them together with 3PLs, depending on market and depending on different reasons. But here we decided quite quickly, due to the pace of it, and also due to this was quite a new area we wanted to do. We said, okay, we do it on our own. And one thing that was new to this as well, as you maybe know, on H&M, how we expanding has been a lot on the store channel, and then we have had a separate online channel. And as you all know, the OMNI topics, of course, in the retail industry and all industries are growing faster and faster. So we also need to look into new technology and new automation that could facilitate for a full OMNI warehouse. Because currently we've had a bit limited visibility in between our different channels. It's been, I mean, due to volume, it's been quite okay to operating them separately. But we saw, of course, due to the customer and consumer changes in behavior, we saw a much more need and go OMNI to planning all our assortment and so forth. And one big topic also was, as I said before, was that our rollouts were quite time consuming. It took, decent amount of time to establish this, both from building the warehouse, of course, always take time, but also to secure the tech foundation in the warehouse. So the goals was to really to create the kind of a future-proof state of the art warehouse. We would like to test new OMNI-ready automation solution using robotics and AI together with EWM. We want to have a flexible operation, I would say, where we can basically set up this a little bit more, not as a McDonald's, but be quite quick then to have a setup that can be operational quite quickly, depending on the need in the different regions. And of course, we really wanted to look into new ways of automation. We have been looking a lot into the pocket sorters and so forth. And here we would like to go into the robotic area and see an AI for sure. But that was kind of the big topics when we started this. And we will talk later about the method. We will start to go in more into the solution. But I think to really, talk a lot about the method was very important. How we went about and did this. But we will start with some slides explaining more about a little bit about the solution on a high level, and also where we have SAP EWM done and to make it in the right context and for the audience in this meeting.
Yeah, maybe I can add one point on the standing up a warehouse. Obviously it takes a long time if you really go on a green field and build a warehouse and put the flooring in and all that. But there's plenty of automation robotics suppliers out there that say, if you have a warehouse, we'll be able to put in our robots and the hardware, because it's not fixed anymore, in a very quick turnaround time. And so that did not align anymore with the long rollout times of EWM. And so that's also where we want to bring it together, I think, in the future.
Yes.
Some of the suppliers can stand up in an existing facility, a warehouse, basically in 6 to 8 weeks. And
yes.
Rolling out EWM prior to this project took longer.
Yes. So I think also, as you said, we will see it was a lot about where do we put different functionality, and also how do we choose our automation vendor and to be able to do this together with us in a quick way. So let's jump into the next slide. So this will tell us, we will go through the whole process here a bit on a high level first. What we call EWM in this is kind of H&M specific, but we talk about the gray box. I guess you heard about black box, basically making sure a warehouse is operated without too much of the company's involvement. Maybe we send it out to a 3PL and they manage it basically. Here we call it gray box because we will have some control of the processes, and we will hand over a lot of control then to our automation partner and their VS system. And when we start then, we looked really at what do we believe is kind of critical processes for H&M, where we also are deviating a bit from branch standard, where we have our kind of legacy on how to manage specific things in the store and online channel. And we saw earlier that our inbound area is somewhere where we have a lot of planning when it comes to moves and when it comes to cross-docking, when it comes to how we allocate things to the store channel and how we allocate things to the online channel. So that complexity we decided, and we also had already built for that. So we had quite a good foundation in how to do goods receiving and how to do then quality assurance in the inbound process. So we saw also that in this warehouse and with our partner that this is something that we should keep in our EWM system then. Then what we started to look at, I mean, what did we really want to, and I will come back to that, so we'll be repeating ourselves, but what we really wanted here was to look at an automation solution, warehouse execution system basically, but that also looked at this kind of from put away to storage to picking and packing, that looked at this a little bit different than what we currently do in EWM then. We are more wave-based and batch-based. We wanted to have something that could basically optimize the flow between the channels, optimize the warehouse layout, optimize the resources that we have in the warehouse to do that more on a ad hoc basis, depending on the volumes we had in the warehouse and the capacity we needed to facilitate for the different channels, knowing also which order was more important in this circumstance. If you worked in both the retail store, as we call it, store channel, and the online channel, we know that the store we can always plan in a different way. When it comes to online customer, depending of course on their how, if they wanted the next day or the same day and so forth, we have a different kind of what do you say? Yeah, we can't be as flexible as we can be with the stores to create a happy customer and keep the customer promise. So I think this was also something we really want to look into, then how we can balance that, and hence we decided to move all this right now then to this automation supplier and their warehouse execution system. They also had quite a good system with AIs where they have a lot of capacity and how to optimize this. And here we also saw a strong effect and a positive kind of outcome in the beginning doing this. And that's why we call it the gray box. We have the inbound in EWM. We move everything all the way to the packing table into our automation supplier and their warehouse execution system. And then we also thought that, okay, we have a lot of things on the outbound side that we have put a lot of money and effort into, and also is in a good shape on, for example, how we're setting up with our distribution in the packing table and managing all of those things, and also how we sort all and make sure the transportation, all the parts basically are done in the right way, both for the online customer and also then for our stores. For the stores, we have a lot of specific setup with delivery schedules and so forth that we thought was good to keep in EWM. So this is kind of the frame we were working with then, and something you want to add on this slide, Alexander, or should we?
No, not really. I think it's just very helpful to have this picture of, it's not a black box. It's not your typical EWM system where you have total visibility. It's this gray box where we keep some of the information out of the system and let the warehouse execution system optimize and manage the details, but then we always be able to control at the end and have especially the visibility, I think, on the inventory, and that's also the beauty. The inventory is really up to date at all times, because the warehouse execution system will constantly do auditing and check that the inventory that we think is there is actually there and sellable.
Yes, very good comments. So I think there's a lot of benefits you can talk about in this project and in this setup. But one thing that we saw that we have had separate ways of being efficient in store picking and in online picking. But we wanted Omni, and I think with this automation partner, we got a good Omni setup where we can store Omni online and store products in the same bins, basically in this MSUs that you will see, and that generated something totally new for us. That this automation basically provided a solution to our Omni problems, where before maybe have to move things between the channel or sub-optimize or not fully optimized flow when we wanted to be Omni in our current warehouses. And one thing that you maybe saw on the video that we also had in the last slide that maybe wasn't highlighted enough, but the rack can basically rearrange them during off hours and also during hours. So we can always optimize how we position our products in the warehouse to be most efficient in the picking and packing. And this is, of course, compared to a more static warehouse, this was really good. And we saw a lot of positive effect on how we manage the takt, basically, and how we manage the right inventory at the right spot to have an efficient pick and pack here. So I think this was kind of the two big things that we could show great benefit of setting up with this specific automation solution. So what we have basically is we have these MSUs, these mobile storage units that are holding the stock and Omni stock then. And then we have robotics and are basically moving around, getting new stock in, and of course moving them to the different pick and pack stations for the outbound. And this, of course, we looked into a lot of things, how to optimize this, but also with this new AI component basically that we have here, we also have a system that can learn not only how to optimize here and now, but also understanding the forecast and the kind of the patterns when it comes to store and when it comes to online. So a lot of things has also improved there when it comes to running these robots and securing they're doing the right tasks basically. And we then have the sorting of the online customer parcels then happening afterwards. Both the store and online customers are basically sorted in a good way then out to the distributions. And as we said, then this stock reorganization at operations idle hour is really so that we can secure and optimize the efficiency where we store different products. And also, as you see, as Alexander talked about as well, that we always keep securing that the stock is up to date, the quantities and so forth. So this was the main thing then when it comes to automation. I think a really important component here is also the kind of AI component here, to where we today are using a lot of good, strong super users and operators to understand how we optimized. Here we also got that component in that can really drive secure, and we learn and become more efficient as we go along.
Yeah, you know what I'm also realized is it was almost visionary to bring this project to fruition or to the first pilot at the time that we're in right now, because we're basically taking out all of the human interaction in the aisles where people get together,
Yes.
and we're having those mobile storage units providing what is also called goods to people services. So the whole storage area is more or less free of people. And we're moving all the inventory to the pack stations, and the pack stations are obviously the 6 feet at least distance between people, 2 meters distance between people. So we are also providing a much more secure environment than we used to have.
Yeah. So basically, as you said, Alexander, the warehouse is more, if you think about it from a warehouse operator perspective, their time is spent basically at the different packing tables. If you look at outbound, to secure we pick and pack correctly then from these MSUs. And of course, we have the inbound area also where we have a lot of warehouse operators. But this whole thing with aisles and this is gone in this solution, basically, as I said.
Yes. Right.
Yes, and I just coming back to this slide one more time then, that what we try then to do, as we said, really move out the H&M where we have invested. First of all, we have built quite solid inbound flows where we have all our legacies. I mean, how we're working with our production and with our suppliers in the whole supply chain is something that we have built quite solid tools for in SAP and SAP EWM, and also the same thing on the outbound, and how we have strong connection with our online platform that would big investments that we thought, and this is good, and that we should keep, and to really secure that what we want to do here is to release the capacity that we have in our automation supplier to really make sure they are doing what they are best at, and that we protect them from the things that we believe is more complex, and would also not only mean that we probably have to develop things with these suppliers that we want to have a standard, we want to have their opinions on how they should run the warehouse and protect them from that. I think was very important, and also that means speed, time to market. If we can decide on that, we focus on optimizing what we are good at and building for where we believe we have the complexity. This is good both from continuous business development as well. If you want to work then with changing specific things in the returns or in the communication with the online customer, we can do that without putting too much pressure on our automation supplier because they are focusing on the warehouse operation. So this kind of slide shows that, I think, in a good way. And as you can see below there also, we have some videos on the MSUs running around in the warehouse. But how do we do this, Alexander, then? I think that's kind of the tricky part. How do you accomplish this in the time we did it?
Yes. This is, I think, where our real value add came in as well, is bringing in a different methodology. And this is not rocket science, but it is focusing on a lot of different details. And I got on the left-hand side our pretty overview with our methodology that basically has 5 phases, from define to discover to design, then the development, and then the deploy. And the secret sauce in here, which is not so secret, is really the mixture of a waterfall approach with a more agile execution in the middle portion. So we're quite traditional. In the beginning, we have run through a short define phase, usually a week or 2, a little bit depending on the project and customer size. Then where we just establish the ground rules, do training for key users, very important, because these key users will accompany the whole project from beginning to the end. Then we go through a discovery phase where we're going to learn together everything about the business, the requirements, the details really of what has been done, where do we want to go in the future. we can execute this in about 2 to 4 weeks, maybe sometimes a little bit longer if it was a more global approach. I think we took about 4 weeks here. And then we go into a design phase. So again, very straightforward waterfall in a way. The difference here is that when we do the design, we don't do a detailed functional blueprinting. We do a more high-level solution design document that outlines what needs to be in there, that all the requirements are described in sufficient detail, but something that can be done really in from smaller projects, maybe 3 weeks, to larger projects, not longer than 8 weeks. So we're striving usually to get this done in 6 weeks. So we have a fast startup with a short time between, starting the project and starting to do some development work. And then we go from there with really a focus of understanding the scope and the overall design, not necessarily understanding every detail yet. And then we go into this development phase, and it's the design phase in the picture is maybe a little bit too big, and the development phase is, on the other hand, quite the right size here. So we go into development phase, and here we create sprints, so short bursts of development, detailed design and development times where we tackle specific objects, and once we get those objects done, then we move on to the next sprint. And I'll explain that a little bit more in the next slide. But it's important that to understand that this is where we become a little bit more agile. We don't go back with a detailed blueprint and then create another black box where all the development is done, and then after 6-8 months or so come back and say, ta-da, here's your solution. And then everybody goes like, well, what were we doing back then and 8 months ago? No, this is really the interactive part where we do development. While we do development, we also already talk about and interact on how we test these items, how do we, and then actually do the testing together, and everything is, everybody's involved, not at 100%, but at a low level, business included, so they also see how things come together over time. As I said, involvement, testing from day one in development, not just at the end. When in a different back room, people will start to put together maybe some development cases. No, this is done all interactively as one team. And it allows us also, with these developments getting completed in little steps, piece by piece, to actually start system integration testing before everything is developed, because we can take pieces, for example, on the inbound side and warehousing, and test them through, because we've organized our sprints in a way that we do maybe a lot of the inbound processes and functionalities first, so we can test the inbound parts and functionalities before we have the complete EWM solution in place. Again, as I said, onboarding, the collaboration, the inclusion, knowledge transfer is happening continuously, not constantly, but continuously. And so there is no big gap between coming together for the original design and delivering at the end a go live.
And I think this was the key, basically, that we kept the sprints in the right amount of weeks to keep the right engagement to the topics we were doing. And we had, as I said, we have a really inclusive environment where we had this show and tells where we can see the business can be part, and we don't have to do kind of shortcuts. We can always discuss about change requests as we move along. We didn't find things in the end in the BRT. We took decision in every startup of the sprint, and that I think also was a success for generating a good knowledge within the team and also making the right decision, not having to cut down too much in the end, and we grow quality.
So let me finish off the circle before maybe talking a little bit about these sprints also again. The deployment is going back to a more waterfall approach, probably, with the exception that again, a lot of the testing is already underway before the end of development. So in a way, it's not really a deployment that happens after development. The deployment activities really start once we have enough volume together from the development that we can go and start system integration testing, some end-to-end testing, so that in deployment we can really focus on the warehouse readiness testing or user acceptance testing, and do the cutover planning, and then have a technical and a business go live with a short hypercare or post go live support phase. So one thing I wanted to highlight are these sprints, and here's a typical sprint. Now doesn't mean that every sprint is always 4 weeks. We're flexible. We look at what comes out of the solution design at the end of the design, and gonna have objects that are more complex, objects that are smaller. Some objects we will be able to develop, do the final design, the detailed functional specification development, and then the confirmation in 3 weeks maybe. Some will take 6 weeks. Well, that's okay. Then some objects will spend or will be done over 2 sprints, and some objects will be done within 1 sprint and maybe less. And the important part is that we really have this cadence of regular meetings between creating the final and detailed specifications and designs for objects, and confirming and through show and tells and short reworks if necessary, or redirections afterwards. This allows us to really have this continuous collaboration with the business, but also across different teams on the technical side. It also allows us to identify early where we may have missed something. Always the danger of the CRs and the change requests, but they become much less of a danger because we understand early that we maybe need to do something extra. And in fact, even though we had a seemingly large number of change requests within the project, it was more of a formal item, and it did not have any impact on budget or timeline. We were able to absorb everything, and not unlike a continuous optimization of this racking in the warehouse, we were optimizing our developments and objects all the time in order to make sure that we stay within budget and timeline and scope, obviously. Good.
Yes, so result. The go live was executed as planned, no delays with the planned scope. And as I said, we stick to the budget, and quality was above expectation. We had a really good tact early in the project, and we were amazed about how well the solution worked, and and I think that's important as well. We're looking into DevOps to keep the knowledge and really securing that we are part of the PDLS and continues to be part of the product we have developed. And outlook, and after this pilot, now we're looking at this specific, having this kind of gray box setup then with certain of our warehouses where we did decide we want to go for an OMNI with more robotic automation. So the next step is to look at how we can basically move this into more product organization also then to run this project in the same way as we did with this, and we have already started to do so. And I think it's really interesting also. Now we've done it with one, but we're also looking into with different VS solutions then, and really to think how can EWM become a fast-moving partner in these different warehouse solutions with different VS suppliers, and I think we have come farther. I think that kind of summarize what we have done then during the last year here, and we are really looking forward to the coming projects, working in this kind of same approach as we did during this one. So are there any questions? I guess maybe we have run out of time as well.
Yeah, we have no questions in the chat. We do have time for one or two quick questions if anybody's got any. While we're waiting, I had a quick question regarding the, I guess this is to Alexander. When you were doing the sprints, you said you did a sign off at the end of each sprint.
Yes.
So do you do any kind of user acceptance testing, acceptance in the deploy phase, or is it already done at the end of the sprint?
No, this sign off is basically to say that this object, this interface or this enhancement works as designed, and we are now ready to move on to the next one. The alternative is that we say, this object does not work as designed. Obviously, then we have to do a little rework. It usually was, when it happened, and it did happen, it was more of a question of a few days rework, or I understood that maybe something was really missing and we needed a little bit more, which then prompted a CR. But it is not a warehouse readiness testing or a user acceptance testing, because this is not process oriented. When we go and do the warehouse readiness testing, user acceptance testing, we're now looking really strictly at the business processes, execute them across different enhancements and interfaces. For example, we'll do an intake, an inbound process end to end that we test in the warehouse readiness testing, where the goods are received, they're put away, and then we look whether the information is communicated back to the EWM system correctly. And so that would include a number of maybe 1 or 2 enhancements and 3 interfaces that we built. So the view shifts quite a bit between the development phase, where we just look for confirmation of the developments, and at the end, a user acceptance testing, where we look also that the user can actually work with this.
But I think the important is here also, in these sprints, we had business counterparts with us. So even though it was a lot of, could be seen as IT technical integrations and so forth, we understood the underlying process with it. So the confirmation was done then in the show hotel, then together with people from where are responsible for our DC design and our processes. But as I said, it was more from a technical development, in conjunction with the process.